All right, so I'm gonna be recording evaluating trig functions day 2. This is the last thing you need to, or the last thing topics that we're covering before test 2. I think test 2 is gonna be very easy. So if you get today, then you should do extremely well on test 2. So first things first, let me share my screen. All right, y'all should see now what I'm seeing. So for evaluating trig functions part 2, it's the same thing as day 1. The only difference is that we're introducing 3 new trig functions. But again, this unit circle right here before we begin is the only thing that you're going to be given on the test. And then you also have to know this. So depending on which quadrant you're on, you have to know what your signs are going to be looking like. So in quad 1, if you remember, it's going to be plus plus. Quad 2, it's minus plus. Quad 3, minus minus. Then quad 4, plus minus. And then you also remember from the evaluating trig functions day 1 that cosine of theta was equal to x, sine of theta is equal to y, and tangent theta is equal to y over x. All right, today we're going to be doing 3 new ones. So cosecant, just know that that's equal to 1 over sine, which and sine is just equal to y. So cosecant is equal to 1 over y. This right here is the important part. This is equal to this. Secant is equal to 1 over cosine, but cosine is just x, so cosecant is equal to 1 over x. Cotangent is equal to 1 over tan, but tan is y over x, so that's equal to 1 over y over x, which is just equal to x over y. Or in other words, cotangent is equal to x over y. All right, so these are the 3 new ones we're going to learn or do today. So let's get started. So for secant to power 4, so it's again very similar to what we're doing on day 1. First thing you want to do is get rid of it or change it from radians to degrees. So what we're going to do is multiply it by 180 over pi. So right here the pi's are going to cancel and you'll be left with 184. Now you're going to do 180 divided by 4. You should be able to do this on the top of your head, but if you're not able to do this on the top of your head, just know that you could use it in a calculator. Calculators are going to be allowed on the second test, but calculator is not very much needed on the test. Maybe for small or for just small calculations like 180 divided by 4 if you need it. But 180 divided by 4 is just 45 degrees. Now, what you're going to do now is just draw your angle. So you start right here. Is 45 bigger than 90? No. So you know you stop in this quadrant. Which quadrant is this? Quad 1. And quad 1, what's your symbols? Plus plus. And then in quad 1, just remember to find a reference angle, we don't subtract by anything. You subtract by 0, so 45 minus 0 is just going to be 45 degrees. And this is going to be our reference angle. So we're going to go up to our chart now and look at 45 degrees. What does it say? Root 2 over 2 and root 2 over 2. So it's going to be root 2 over 2 is our point. Now, we're finding secant power 4. And remember, secant is equal to 1 over x. So it's an equal to 1 over our x value, but our x value over root 2 over 2. So it's going to be root 2 over 2. Now, we want to clean this up, but the way that we do it is we're first going to grade the bottom two. And the way we do that is just multiply both the top and the bottom by 2. So the bottom twos are going to cancel. On top, you have 1 times 2, which is just 2. And then what's left on the bottom is root 2. Now, we don't want square roots on the bottom of our fractions. So what we're going to do is multiply by the bottom part of our denominator on both the top and the bottom. So we're going to multiply both root 2 and on both the top and the bottom. On the top, 2 times root 2 is just 2 root 2. And on the bottom, root 2 times root 2 is just 2. We got 2 on the top and the bottom, so those just cancel, and you're just left with root 2, and you're done. All right, so the typical part, I would say, of today's lesson is less of the first part. So from here to here, I think this is super straightforward and easy. I think this part right here, specific. This part right here is the most difficult part. Getting from here all the way to this final answer is what's going to be the most difficult part today. But if you got this so not difficult, then you'll do well. All right, next question. So we have, let me see. Yep, secant of power 5 power 4. So the first step you got to do is multiply, change it from radians to degrees. So the way we do that is multiply by the top and we multiply it by 1/8 over pi. Now pi's are going to cancel. So left on top is just going to be 5 times 180. On the bottom to be left with 6. So 5 times 180 is just 900 divided by 6, which is equal to 150. Now, since we have our degrees, we're going to draw our angle. So is 150, is 90 bigger than 150? Or is 150 bigger than 90? Yes. So bigger than 180? No. So we know we stop in this quadrant. So what quadrant are we in? Quad 2. Now, what's our symbols in quad 2? It's minus plus. Now, in quad 2, to find our reference angle, you just have to, if you don't remember, you could just go back to the video that we did for finding reference angles. Otherwise, just remember in quad 2, the shortcut is to subtract by 180. So it's going to be 180 minus 150, which is just equal to 30 degrees. And that's going to be your reference angle. 30 degrees is our reference angle. So we're going to look at our chart. For 30 degrees, so right here, 30 degrees. It's root 3 over 2 and 1/2. So we're just going to write that down. So root 3 over 2, 1/2. Now, the only thing that's going to change is the first one because we have minus on the front. So that's going to change to a negative. Now, is rewrite down the question. So cotangent 5 pi 6. Cotangent, what is it equal to? X over y. So your x value goes first. So negative root 3 over 2 all over 1/2. Now we can both see on the top and the bottom, they have a bottom number 2. So those 2's are going to cancel. What's left on top? Negative root 3. On the bottom, 1. And then what's negative root 3 divided by 1? That's just going to be negative root 3, and that's your answer. And we're done. So again, I think that the first part is easy. I think the difficult part is the actual last step of just simplifying it down to your final answer. But again, I think this is easy, super doable, and this is the hard part. All right, we're going to turn the page around. So, same thing. First step, change it from, we got to change it from radians to degrees. So the way we do that is to multiply by 180 over pi. Pi's are going to cancel. So on top, it'll be left with 3 times 180. On the bottom, you'll be left with 2. Now, 3 times 180 is just 540. On the bottom, still 2. 540 divided by 2 is 270. Now, what we're going to be doing now is drawing our angle. But let me see if this wants to clear up a bit. Okay. There's, so you're going to draw your angle now. But now is 270 bigger than 90? Yes. Is it bigger than 180? Yes. Is it bigger than 270? No. But is it smaller than 270? No. So we know we stop right here. Now we're just gonna have to use some common sense. If the top part is 0, 1, what do we think the bottom point is gonna be? And it's gonna be 0, -1. So since the bottom is 0, -1, and we already have our point, we could just go straight into evaluating. So we have secant of 3 pi over 2. And secant is just equal to 1 over x. So it's going to be 1 over our x value, but our x value is 0. So it's 1 over 0. But what's 1 divided by 0? And it's not 0. 1 divided by 0, remember we can never divide by 0. So it's just going to be undefined. All right. So next thing we're going to do is go to the next question. So for the next question, you have cosecant of 4 pi over 3. First step is multiply both the top and the bottom by one, or multiply your radian by 180 or pi to change from radians to degrees. Pi's are going to cancel. Left on top is just 4 and 180, so 4 times 180. On the bottom is 3. 4 times 180 is 720. So the other one is left by 3. And now 720 divided by 3 is 240. And now since we have our degree, we're just going to draw our angle. So is 240 bigger than 90? Yes. Is it bigger than 180? Yes. Is it bigger than 270? No. So we know we stop here. Which quadrant did I stop in? Quad 3. So I'm going to write down quad 3. Now let me see if it clears up. So in quad 3, what are our symbols? It's going to be, I messed up, it's minus minus. Now, to find our reference angle in quad 3, we have to subtract by 180. That's a shortcut. So 240 minus 180, that's just going to equal to 60 degrees. And now we're going to look at 60 degrees and see what the point is. So at 60 degrees, it's 1/2 and root 3 over 2. So I'm going to write down 1/2 and root 3 over 2. But since we have a minus minus, that means they're both going to be negative. And now you can just go straight into evaluating. So cosecant of 4 pi over 3 is just equal to 1 over x, remember, since it's, or 1 over y, because it's cosecant. So it's going to be 1 over negative root 3 over 2. Now, first thing we want to do is get rid of this bottom 2. So we're going to multiply both the top and the bottom by 2. These 2's are going to cancel. On top, 1 times 2, that's just 2. On the bottom, you have negative root 3. Now, to get rid of the root 3, you're just going to multiply both the top and the bottom by root 3. So on top, 2 times root 3 is just 2 root 3. On the bottom, root 3 times root 3 is just 3. And since you have this negative from earlier, just put it in the front and you're done. And that is your answer. All right, so again, I think this first step right here is easy. Getting to this point is easy. I think it's just the final answer that's going to be difficult. Going from here all the way to here. But again, it's just like 2 steps that you're doing every time, maybe 3. So it isn't that bad, I think. But again, to each to its own. All right, last one of the day or of the vid. So there's a typo in this question. It should be negative 330. So for cosecant of a negative 330, the way we're going to do it is the same thing. Since it's already in degrees, it's nice and easy where we don't have to convert it. So we're just going to draw our angle. And then since it's negative, we have to go backwards. 330 bigger than 90. Yes. 180. Yes. 270. Yes. 360. No. So we stop in that quadrant. What quadrant am I in? Quad 2. What's my symbols? Or quad 1 I'm at. In quad 1, what are my symbols? Pause plus. Or what are my signs? Plus plus. Now, in quad 1, if you remember the shortcut to find your reference angle, if you don't, it's fine. You just got to know that in quad 1, we add by 360. So negative 330 plus 360 is just 30 degrees. Now, with those 30 degrees, you're going to look at your chart. So you're going to go to your chart. 30 degrees, what is it? Root 3 over 2 and 1/2. So it's going to be root 3 over 2 and 1/2. And since it's plus plus, we don't have to change it. We can just leave it how it is. Now, we just go straight into our answer. So cosecant of negative 330, that's just going to equal to, again, 1 over y. So it's going to be 1 over 1/2. And again, we don't want this 2 to be on the bottom. So the first thing we're going to do is multiply both the top and the bottom by 2 over 2. 2 is on the bottom, we're going to cancel. On top, 1 times 2 is 2. On the bottom, you're left over with just 1. 2 divided by 1 is just 2. And that's your answer and you're done. So again, I think this next test should be pretty easy. Should be having a class average that's high. Other than that, that is it for the video. We do got a test coming up, so you want to study for that. And that's about it. So let me just stop sharing and then stop recording. And then that is it for the video. So good luck on the test.